Welcome everyone. You are viewing and listening to Chief Speaks on Enlightenment and Transformation. I am Chief Yuya, and I want to thank you all for tuning in. And of course, welcome all of you coming in from the archives. Those of you who are not listening live right now and may come in, who've come in 2-3 years after the date on this show, you're welcome all the same. There's no time. There's no space, so there's just the now moment. So, I want to appreciate your choice for being here right now, and I want to welcome you in this moment of right now. So this month, as all months are themed, and they're themed in sequence, this month we've been dealing with the topic of family. Of course, last Sunday we did our premiere show on family, where we got to discuss just some of the things that need to occur prior to the formation of family, or even prior to the approach that some of us embark on when we see something or someone that we may be attracted to or we're into. And this show will probably not be much different. I decided this Sunday to keep it pretty light, and the reason being is the subject is such a broad subject, and the truth is, when we speak about the building of family, everything that I've been teaching you all with our new spiritual training, with enlightenment and transformation, and with all the offerings that I've presented up until this point, has really been about the formation and the solidifying and codifying of your own honor system. And that honor system begins to point you in the direction of properly mating, of properly respecting the laws of gender, knowing that there's a male counterpart, there's a female counterpart, and those counterparts will produce something, whether what's produced is tangible or physical, or whether that thing is produced in the spirit world and it's unseen. But either way, everything we've pretty much been discussing kind of leads us to this space, even if you've been led here unknowingly. So I decided this month, especially because this month dealing with the topic of family can be such a strong topic, and I know it can be an extremely polarizing topic, and primarily because many of us come from different cultural systems. Many of us come from different cultural acknowledgments of what's right, what's wrong, what's moral, what's immoral, so coming from that type of space, it becomes difficult to really say we all need this or we all need that, and you never really need to. Even the Most High does not work in absolutes. There's no absolutes. If anything is absolute, then that means it's maxed itself out to its apex. And if it's maxed itself out to its apex, it's not producing. Just like you and I, at some point, we're going to max ourselves out to the apex of what we are, the apex of what we could have been, and it's up to our offspring to now push the apex of what we represent. Your offspring are a reflection of you. They're your next step. So if your offspring are directed and dictated to in a way where they do the exact same things that you did and have the exact same aspirations that you do, then you've reached an absolute where there's no growth. There's a demise. There's a stagnating demise. Not necessarily death. Death is that transformation, but a demise is just an ending of something because it didn't grow with the paradigm shifts. Okay, and we see this all the time. Our word for it is outdated. When something becomes outdated, what does that basically mean? Well, it's lost its relevancy. It's lost its usefulness. So now it's no longer relevant, so we don't use it anymore, or maybe we'll recycle it and reappropriate it for another cause. So the same thing can happen with us as beings. If we think that there's an apex to reach, and we touch that apex and we stay on that plateau without any type of encouragement or push that moves us beyond that plateau, no matter how fearful it may be, then we cease to be, essentially, because the world is always creating new paradigms. The world is always creating new planes. You see, very similar to, sometimes you have people who don't really catch your attention. They're almost negligible, and a lot of times this happens because they're still working on an old paradigm. They're still working on an old model. So that old model is not really what we're attracted to right now. You may see somebody walking down the street with a mullet or a shag, which is the Afro-American, if you will, version of the mullet. And you may not really give them much attention because that look fits a certain era. It fits a certain dimension. And we're no longer looking to operate and adapt ourselves within that dimension. So now those individuals who are still stuck in that space, they become outdated and outmoded. And in that, we cease to see them as much as we saw them before. So just kind of pushing the clock, not keeping up with the times, but defining and pushing the times is actually a very spiritual thing. It's metaphysical, to be honest with you. But like I said, I kind of wanted to keep it light in this segment, or really this month. I think I'm gonna keep it light. And I see a lot of you, though I thought I was gonna get a lot of backlash from last Sunday's show, there's been a lot of positive response by way of emails and comments and on the videos and likes and things like that. So I'm glad that those of you who appreciated it. And for those of you who didn't, it's okay. You don't have to like everything. This is not a religion, But in any event, there's something that's been kind of nagging at me. And I was thinking about it recently in terms of doing these segments. And I was saying that there are so many points that need to be touched upon, but those particular points may not be the most popular. And of course they aren't. A lot of times when your community, and I speak about this in my book, The 14 Keys is coming forth. A lot of times when your community spirits or your community vibration calls for something, if the times are changing, what the community is going to call for may not be something that was called for previously. It may not be a role or position that any of us have ever witnessed before. So if the community calls for warrior scholars, but we've never had warrior scholars as a part of our community, you got to understand that it's a celestial petition. It's not just that these individuals or these archetypes, they pop up haphazardly or they pop up randomly. Now, if you happen to be one of the people who were born into a community and your purpose is to be that archetype of what is needed, it can be very difficult. And the reason why it can be so difficult is because a lot of times you don't necessarily have a black print that was laid before you that shows you, well, we had one like you before, and this is how it turned out for them, or this is what they did in order to garner success in terms of that position. Sometimes the things that we're required and called to be are so unpopular and so unheard of, and sometimes it's an outright outrage to the ego of a community or the ego of our people, that it becomes very hard to imagine fulfilling our role or fulfilling our purpose. And we might even give up. We might just say this is impossible. No one has ever done this. Perhaps I'm imagining things. I thought this is what I was supposed to do, but I'm probably not supposed to do that based on the fact that no one has done it or haven't seen it done, right? So, that's just a warning, but it also goes to what I'm speaking about in terms of the community building, right? A lot of times you'll hear me say that the sickest members of, especially my group, are the females. Why are the females the sickest? Because them being a negative contractive energy, they absorb everything. And if you don't have womb mastery, which many are not taught, then you don't know how to absorb everything and then transform it into what you want it to be. See, that's the evilness. That's what made the melanin dominant woman evil in mythology, because she had the ability to bring things into her womb or bring things into her environment and change them forever. Once they came through her tubes, once they came through her path, right, through her course, they were never the same again. You see, so that became an evil thing because it was like Kali. It was a sign of annihilation. When this individual comes, when this woman comes, nothing will be the same ever again. But unfortunately, and I would say sadly, so many are not taught those sciences. They're not taught those womb sciences. They're not taught how to bring things into their vortex and completely transform them and become the central figure of whatever it is that has now entered into them. So, of course, just being a sponge and gestating with whatever toxins or poisons or ideas, whether they be healthy or unhealthy, that were handed to you can lead to a lot of sickness, right? So whose job is it to ensure that that doesn't happen, and there's some filters put in place, and that there's an actual vanguard? Of course, it's the men. So a lot of times you'll hear me say, yeah, the women are the sickest, the women are the most insane. Absolutely, but it's the man's fault. You know, so I know we don't like to put fault or put blame on anyone. And that's primarily because of what we've been taught, because of what we've become in terms of our development. You know, and if we can't pinpoint blame, if we can't pinpoint the source, then we scatter our energy. And scattered energy, you know, you can't accomplish anything without focus. You need to be able to focus on a target. You need to be able to focus on an agenda to get anything done. I mean, focus is the core principle of anything that needs to happen in life, right? So focus is a key piece, and this show is not about focus. Perhaps I'll do one about that later, but what it does lead me to speak about is the masculine principle. I know in the last segment I presented some balance points in terms of what we need to be aware of as men and what we need to be aware of as women, right? But again, this all begins with the men, you know, in terms of the initial spark. You got to always remember that left unto itself, the feminine principle, or the feminine energy vortex does nothing, wants nothing, needs nothing. Like the cipher, everything, it's everything. It's a complete circle. It's complete. There's no hard angles or anything like that. It's a complete circle, but at the same time, it has nothing, you know, but it has completeness. So it desires nothing. It's the masculine principle that says, okay, I want something. I want something to be. And then once it wants something to be, it now creates a trajectory. You know, you can look at this in a real simple way. If you look at the numbers, right? You look at the number 0. How many angles in the number 0? None, right? 0. How many, or 0, you do it that way. How many angles in the number 1, right? We can look at this, there's none. Right? So you put that 0 and that 1 together, there's no type of variation as of yet. There's no plan created until the 2 come together. Now, once the 2 come together, you get the number 2, right? Now, if you look at the number 2, in reality, 2 has 2 angles in it. 1 up top, 1 on the bottom, right? 2. So if you notice with a lot of the numbers, even the number 3, you'll see that there's 3 angles in it. All right, now there's another science to the angles of numbers. I promised myself that I'm going to do a show on numbers one day. I wanted to speak about the sacredness of the number shapes, where those shapes actually came from. But let's go back to what I'm talking about. So the 0 by itself, it says I'm not charting any path. I'm not like 2, where I say I gotta go there and then I gotta go there to make something happen. I'm just here. 1 comes in and it's directed. It has power now. It says, okay, I want to go into that 0, and then once it goes into that 0, 0, 1, 2, it goes to the 2, and now it has 2 different paths, 2 different directions that it's going to. So the 1 stares up the 0 to create now some form of course or some scheme. And what I see so often, I have to be honest, I mean, it really disgusts me. So that's why I'm speaking slowly, because I don't want to turn this into a rant. But I see so many males out here without direction and posturing themselves as men. And then what happens is sometimes a woman will get staring from somewhere. A lot of times it's from me. A woman will buy my book or listen to a show, or usually it starts with a show before they get the book. And then they'll say, wow, you know, this is what I've been hankering for. This individual has some direction, and then they may present it to their mate, and this happens all the time. So I need to put out a disclaimer. A lot of my clients who I speak to and students, you'll probably say, he's talking about me. I'm not talking about you. I am talking about you. Okay, what do I mean? it's not a unique story. I have a lot of clients that have that same exact thing. And I spoke about that in the last show, where it's the woman who wants to get the divination and do this and do that. And the guys in the back are like, whatever, I don't care, you know. And it's a really disgusting thing, because your job is to be the one that cares. Your job is to be the one that has a mission statement for the family, that has a path for the family, that has a trajectory. Because what happens is, once you create that too, a lot of times you get with these women, you create these children, and then she looks at you like, okay, what are we gonna do? I don't know. I mean, I love my family. You know, you come up with these stupid answers. And the thing is that you're taking away from the natural and mystical rhythm and mystical mathematics of the universe by not playing your position properly. So then what happens is like what I spoke about in the last show. You get these women who now they don't want to hear anything from a man. They're just not interested, right? Because the man that I devoted myself to, engaged myself to, who I'm now psychically locked to, has no mission and has no plan. So in order for me to invite direction from another man in many ways, I have to cut ties with that original man, okay? So I'm gonna speak about it in a less metaphorical sense. I feel like I'm being very simple right now, but for those who may not have even processed that, and the reason I'm saying that, I feel like it's something that really needs to be processed amongst the males. And I'm making it a point, I'm promising myself not to go in too much on this subject, okay? Because this could easily be a 5-hour show. Manhood, okay? A lot of times guys are so scared. And I'm gonna show you something, I'm gonna tell you something that happens early on to males, and it happens to females, that really shuts down their gender assignment and shuts down their gender obligations. A lot of times when we're young, we have the notions of our genders already. Okay, some of us are born with defects. Some of us are born with chemical imbalances. Our parents didn't eat the right foods. They surrounded us with the wrong type of materials, put the wrong type of colors around us, the wrong type of sounds around us. Our father's sperm was dirty. Our mother's womb was dirty. So we have all of these different factors working against us. And with those type of factors working against us, is it possible to be born with certain defects where we could say, okay, I was born with an imbalance mentally, or I was born with a gender imbalance or a gender confusion, or I was born already with a sort of identity crisis? Absolutely. But that's becoming a newer era phenomenon based on the advancement of certain chemical additives and just the advancement of a larger scheme and agenda, right? So not everyone comes under that. But what happens is, a lot of time, what we do to our young people is, when they first immediately express the wildness of their gender, we shut it down. Because the feminine agenda and the masculine agenda, to themselves, all to themselves, those two agendas are wild agendas. Okay, if you look at nature, look at how things grow. The strongest things are the wild things, not the domesticated things. The domesticated things, in most instances, we don't want. We want to get away from. We want wild strawberries. We want wild berries. We want wild flowers, right? Because we know there's a certain strength there, because each gender specific of that particular plant in the botanical kingdom was allowed to express itself freely. Okay, and when we lock down that expression, we lock an individual down for years and years and years to come. Okay, so a lot of times for young girls, we'll start there, where the lockdown initiates is when she has her first mystical experience. And it may be something small as a question, or it may be something she saw, and she mentions it and she's told that she's weird, either among her friends or her parents. And then it creates an inner shame. Like, you know, I've always seen things, I've always had dreams and things like that, and people told me I was crazy. So now they seek to conform. So they lock that down, and they learn not to give their heart. You know, they learn to build layers around the heart center, because the heart center is where they decide to make their decision as to if they're going to be the weird girl or they're going to be the cool girl. So they lock that down. Then it only gets worse. They get to it could be early teens or teenage years, they start to date, right? And they find an individual who's able to kind of crack the shell a little bit, maybe because of how he looks, or maybe he smells a certain way, he reminds her of her father or whatever it is. And he abuses it, not knowing how fragile a young girl is, because sometimes we don't know. If young boys are not taught, and not taught from the perspective of simping, where you treat girls nice and hold the door open for them, not that dumbness, but actually are really taught, listen, at this age, at this moment, let's say from 9 to 13, a young lady is in this form, or is in this state. And then from 14 to 17, she's in this state. And boom, 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 boom. And you're taught to respect and honor that. Then you would know what your approach should be like. Just like for those of you out there, you men who have daughters, you know at a certain age, you have to be totally attentive to your daughter. You just have to. You could be driving in the car, you're listening to one of your favorite songs, and if you hear that Baba or that Daddy, everything gets turned off, windows get rolled up, AC gets put on. Yes, sweetheart? And it might be the smallest question, but you have to do that. You have to let her know that her opinions, her thoughts, her feelings are important, they're valid. And it's worth closing down shop in order to hear what it is that she wants to express. Because she is the abstract element, she is the creative element, she is the artful element. So when you don't shut her down, then you get to see the beauty and the artfulness of life. So we have that on the feminine side. And of course it goes deeper. I'm keeping it light. But on the masculine side, this is where it's most heinous, because the truth is, like I said, it's the male's fault. If the boys are allowed to be boys, you'd be surprised the freedom and the liberty it would bring to the girls. Because a lot of times, if you think about it, when we look at the imbalances in our families, and you see an Amazonian woman, as I call them, and a midget male, 9 times out of 10, when you ask that woman, why do you feel it necessary to take the lead all the time and to tell this man what to do and to manipulate him and be the boss, and you gonna listen to me and you got your hand on your hip and all that nonsense like that? 9 times out of 10, what will they tell you? Well, because if I don't, who's gonna do it? There's a truth to that. If I don't take the lead, nothing gets done. Oh, we're only even in your class, Chief UR, because it was my idea. Or we moved because it was my idea. Or the only reason we even have children is because I brought it up and said we should have children. This guy doesn't come up with anything. He's like a woman. He's like the feminine principle. He just sits and gestates. And all he does is provide resources. He goes to work every day. He'll give me his check or whatever it is, but he has no direction. Well, that's a flip-flopping, because that's what the feminine principle does. Resource, the source of light, going back to the source, resource. Well, what is the source of all things? It's the primordial abyss of the feminine nature. That's where all things come from. That's where the source of all things come from. Some people call that place heaven. Heaven is a feminine space. Heaven is yin, earth is yang. You see, so in that, we see that there's a flip-flopping that takes place, right? But the reason, again, I say I focus on the male principle for a moment, because 9 times out of 10, when you see a female out of pocket, it's because she was slightly nudged out of pocket. She wasn't just born with the desire to dominate. You see, or dominate men, because there's a time for women to dominate. There's a time for women to teach. When you're teaching women who are beneath you in stature and who need to come up to where you are, or when you're talking to children. That's your time to give orders and say, do this, do that, do that. That's your opportunity. You don't do that with a man. If you are doing that with a man, then that's not a man, because a man would never tolerate that type of infringement on their boundary, on infringement on their definition. You know, a lot of flies. We're coming to dust now, so now out comes the mosquitoes. But a man is not, even a young boy who has aspirations towards manhood, it's not gonna allow that level of infringement. That's when things are found out. The first time he looks at his mother and says, "You can't talk to me like that." I mean, I've had those type of statements that I've had to say to mothers and aunties, and when I got to that age, it was like, I don't care who you are. I have to protect this, because see, a lot of times people don't realize that a man protecting his manhood is like him protecting his life. When you see instances when men go crazy or jump back or run because their genitals are threatened, it's not just because it's a sensitive spot. It's not just because it's a nerve center that hurts if it's hit, but it's because the manhood, our power of creation, is so important. It's so important that people have built monuments to it. People have depicted all type of deities throughout different traditions and pantheons that just represented man's possibility and creative potential. You see, so it's a very important thing. And whenever we feel that infringed upon, we see that as an act of war. We protect that almost like we're protecting our life, because in fact we are, because that's how we continue. We understand, it may be deep in there, but it's in there, that most of us come from matrilineal systems. So the only way that we continued was through reproduction as men. The women continued just through the line because it was matrilineal. So all we had was, like we say, my word and my testicles, right? So the sad tragedy is a lot of times you see males terrified to take that space. Terrified about what's going to happen, terrified to say, you know what, no, I'm going to take the lead, I'm going to do what I'm supposed to do, I'm going to give my family direction. They're just scared. And some are not born with the wherewithal to make those decisions. Some are not born with the wherewithal to say, this is what I need to do, this is how I need to present myself, this is what I need to give to my family, and those should not be allowed to reproduce. Sadly enough, though, those are the ones that tend to have the most children. Those are the ones that have 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 children. It's the ones that have direction that are railed against and suppressed. I was looking at something the other day. I was thinking about DMX, and I was saying to myself, he's someone who I know. I've known him for a while, just through the music and whatnot like that. So I saw him and knew him when he had a better handle on some of the issues that he's currently dealing with. But when you look at the frustration and the disgust that he and other men of that era have with not only music, but just society in general, it's because what we're seeing is what I called before. In earlier shows you might listen, and I said, yeah, the conscious community is revenging the nerds. You have all of these weaklings, all of these betas, imposturing themselves as alphas, and because they're just alpha enough, but not alpha enough to be threatening to the current status quo, those are the ones that are promoted above the real alphas. And it sends the real alphas into sometimes a violent depression, and the violence sometimes is waged against themselves, or it sends them into hermit mode. You see, so you look at someone like DMX and say, man, he's got all this money, he's got this, he's got that. Why is he doing these things? Or you look at different artists who seem to have been very self-destructive, right? It's because they're unable to resolve what's actually going on in society right now. They're looking at certain people who are being pushed and promoted, and they're seeing a culture and the people that they love destroyed as a result of it. I look at sometimes, even myself, I look at some of these teachers, and all I see are feminine energy. And feminine energy sells. That's what people want right now. They want you to come in, namaste, and it's beautiful today, and I just want to thank everyone for coming in. Let me take the bass out of my voice. The less bass I have, the better, And it needs to be that type of a vibe. And then what happens is the women love it. And then if the women love it, then the males will love it, because they're used to following direction from the women. The artist Tupac said the same thing. But see, these are the ideas that are implanted, and then we carry that forward, generation to generation, and then it produces hordes of beta males. Now, it becomes difficult for those who are looking to reclaim the alpha status, because you got to fight through that. And a lot of times it creates a lot of isolation. You got to understand that you're going to be alone. You know, you're gonna have a lot of women and young people in your face saying, "Why are you so?" And you know, why's it got to be always about that? Why do you always have to be in control? This, that, and the third. But it's okay, because sometimes you got to learn to let generations die out. You know, there's a filtering process that goes on. And right now, whether you look in music or whether you look at art or whether you look at the conscious community, nobody's filtering. That's the problem. You know, it reminds me, I usually don't like to talk about my past too much, primarily because it's no one's business. But, well, that's it, yeah. Primarily and secondarily. But I'm going to share this piece. I remember years ago, and the reason I'm bringing it up, because I ran into this person recently and we were laughing and joking about just some of the adventures that we had as youth. This was an individual I've known since I was, I think about 7, 8 years old, something like that. So lifetime, you know, a lifetime friend. But you know, when I first met this person, I'm not going to say his name. I'll call him M. I'll call him M, right? So when I first met M was the baddest child in our neighborhood. And when I say bad, I don't mean bad like, you know, smoking cigarettes bad. I mean bad like 10 years old, has crack rocks, and he's selling and smoking them. You know, he was real bad. And for some reason, as what happened so often in my childhood, he took a liking to me, right? It was him and another one who I'll call Jay. Well, all right, we'll leave Jay out of it because I actually just kind of said his name. Because everybody called him Jay. So we'll leave him out, but he was bad too. So let's just deal with him, right? And basically it was a bully relationship, you know, for like a long time, like almost a year. Like he was my friend somehow, but he used to, you know, antagonize me, you know, not just verbally, but physically too, right? And it got to the point that when he would come to the house, like I would not open the door. You know, like my siblings would be, I'd be like, you know, no. And he'd be banging on the door, yo. And I wouldn't open the door and whatnot. And, you know, he would only really be able to get at me when like my mother was in, you know, because she just didn't get it for some reason, you know. And, you know, like, he was really polite to her. Hi, man, you know, she'd give him a kiss on the cheek. How you doing, baby? Right? So I remember telling my mother, like, listen, M is torturing me. He's not my friend. And I would try to explain this to her. She'd just be like, oh, you just need to learn to make friends. You're so shy, you don't talk, you need to make friends. And I'd be like, yo, he's not my friend, right? So it got to the point one day, there was a series of events, and even like in school and whatnot, everybody knew him as my friend. The teachers used to warn me about him, you know, because he was older than me too. He had me by about maybe 2-3 years, but he was a big child, you know. So we're talking like he at the time, now he's maybe 15, 16 years old. I'm like 12, something like that. But I was a big child, so at 12 I looked like I was about 16. But he was a serious 15, 16-year-old. I mean, he was getting girls pregnant, having abortions, you know, guns, all kind of, like, you know, he was just out there. But we both shared a love for music. We actually were both musicians, believe it or not. And that's kind of what we would vibe on. We used to just like to sit and listen to music and do bad things, you know, stuff that young people shouldn't be getting involved in. But, you know, the linkage there was music. So something that happened one day where I just decided I'm not taking this anymore, man. Like, nah, this is, I don't like how this feels. I don't like when I go to the bus stop in the dawning not knowing what's gonna happen. What kind of mood is he in today? Is he gonna be trying to put out a cigarette on me and yeah, 1340, smoke a cigarette, like, you know, trying to, whatever it is. So he laid in one day, and it was just he and I. We were on the road, and I was just like, nah, not today. So we're going at it. And at this time now, I'm fighting. I'm nice with my hands. And I had some incidents that happened prior to that where I found out I was tough. I didn't know I was tough up into then. I was the quiet, artsy one, but I didn't know I was actually a tough guy. So, you know, I had a little bit of like brave enough, like, no, enough. So we fighting, we going at it, right? And there was this brick on the side of the road. So I ended up getting the brick, turning around backwards, boom, hit him in the face with the brick. And while he's holding his face, I hit him again, bow. He goes out, he's unconscious, right? So yeah, I know this is kind of gory, but this is what boys go through, right? So I remember he was later, I thought he was dead, really, because I had never really seen somebody unconscious like that. So I remember grabbing him by his pants legs and pulling him into the middle of the street, and his pants started coming down. So I grabbed his belt in his leg, and I'm dragging him into the street, and I just dragged him in the middle of the street and left him for dead, because I was like, a car come by and hit him, and then problem solved. I won't have this problem anymore. So this was like, this must have been around October, I think, because I remember it was around, kids were out trick-or-treating and stuff like that. And yeah, I remember like a month or two later seeing him one night and thinking it was, you know, it was gonna be on, and he was just like, yo, you wanna go? It was something bad. He was like, yo, you wanna go to the, I'm like, all right, cool. And we were the best of friends from that day ever forward. You see, to this day, we're still very close. You know, I consider him my brother, and he considers me his brother, right? But it took that moment of just getting beyond the fear and losing some of the value that I placed on my life and placed on his. And I said, I'm just gonna kill him today. You know, he gotta go today. You know, and dragged him in that street. And I remember walking away picturing like somebody's Cadillac just coming and just whoosh, and like him just squishing and exploding all over the street. And I was like, but he ain't gonna bully me anymore, because I didn't want to live in a way where I didn't feel like I was gonna be like my father or my older siblings or my uncles. I didn't want that for myself. And you know, I was scared, and I never saw them scared. I'm sure they were, but I didn't want that for me. And it would haunt me, and it would really mess with me that, you know, there was another individual somewhere on the planet that was making me feel like a coward, that would make me certain times not go a certain street or whatever like that. And I was like, that individual can't be. Anyone who makes me feel less than what I am cannot be. Either they have to stop or they can't be here anymore. Okay, so you know, you go back sometimes and you think about these pivotal moments, and I mean, there were more moments than that, but that was one of them where I had to get through that was David and Goliath, because it was darn near that. I mean, he had me by about 4 inches, you know, so it was like a David and Goliath situation. But a lot of these young boys who are now males, adult males, don't have stories like that. You know, they don't have any type of recollections or any experiences where they had to really get through something that was really torturing them down almost on a spiritual level. Okay, so they don't know the strength and to have to almost face your mortality and say, okay, maybe I won't be here tomorrow, but today cannot end the way it is right now. The person I am today, I'm not going to go to bed like this. So if tomorrow doesn't come, it doesn't come. So what? But I'm going to live with integrity, and I'm going to live with originality. I'm going to be me, no matter what. So what happens now, as I grow and as I mature and as the person grows and matures who didn't have that filtering process, and I have a lot of them. I'm just giving one story, you know, and that was like it was almost, to me, I can laugh now, you know, it's like a funny story, because if I told you some of the other ones, you'd be shocked. But that's how I know there's a purpose for my life, because, you know, whoever, you know, situations we talk about, statistical situations, I should have been in all those, you know, but I'm here, right? So there was a filtering process that occurred when I was younger. If you wanted to be in a certain space, you had to prove to the controllers and dominators of that space that you deserved to be there, that you had the right to be there. So when I was young, I used to like to do a lot of things that caused me to have to be around the big kids, right? Big kids being the teenagers, the 16-year-olds, 17-year-olds, 18-year-olds, and older. So I had to prove that I could be in that space, because in every environment you go in, you're gonna have wolves. And wolves are necessary because they get rid of all of the smaller foraging animals that would offset the ecosystem. So right now, when you look in the conscious community, you look in a lot of the families in the houses, you know, you're seeing the results of an imbalanced familial ecosystem. You know, ecosystem, again, eco being life, you know, so a life system. A life system requires that there's certain predators in the environment so that we can weed out the betas, and let's see if the alphas are still here. So in that instance, when I went against the scariest kid in the neighborhood and annihilated him, it was like he was able to say, okay, we're both wolves. Because when you put two wolves or two bulls together, they're gonna butt heads, you know, and one is gonna come out and the other one may not. In that instance, it was like, you know, what was that, a Thunderdome, you know, two men enter, one man leave, you know. And that's when I was young. I had that, like, it was that game they used to have, Mortal Kombat, something like finish him, you know. That was always my thing. When it was a confrontation, I'm going through, you know, you got to be done. Because if you got me to that point, chances are it's because you're antagonizing me to an unreasonable degree, because I'm the type of person, if somebody wants a problem, I'll try to talk them out of it. You know, I'll crack a joke before I'll try to crack you upside your head. And if that doesn't work, I'll try something else, and I'll keep trying, or, you know, extracting myself from the situation. And if it needs to go to that level, then it's gonna go all the way there, and I don't want that. I was always aware of my Ogun nature as a child, and I didn't, you know, you don't want to do that to people, you know. But so that filtering process was key, and it is key even today for the men to come forward. Just like there's a filtering process for real women to come forward. You see? You have women as well that are being overran by imposters. How many times, especially for those of you who may live in the Atlanta area or the Dallas area, ran up on what you thought was a woman and it was a man? You see, because it's been so easy to imposter what we now have been programmed to think womanhood is. Womanhood has been reduced to makeup and wigs and a shape. So now you have individuals who may not be as sure of their ability as men, who say, you know what, it'll be easier to be a woman. I'm definitely less threatening, and instead of the wolves looking to test me now, the wolves will show me some form of affection. Okay, and all I have to do is adjust myself and my system to enjoy that affection. You see, to make that level of affection or that level of approach something that I become comfortable with, right? And an alpha will never be comfortable with that. An alpha is never going to be comfortable with it being anything less than the reflection of the divine masculine principle. Period. Now, I know, again, you know, and this is going to be an offensive month, so some might say some things against that, but if you say anything against that, it's just because you just don't know. That's all. So now is your opportunity to know. Just like a real woman is going to know when there's a male impersonating her. And in fact, a real woman is going to be offended by that. An adult girl is going to think it's cute. That's going to be her best friend. Oh, that's my best friend Cha-Cha or Chi-Chi or Dre Dre or whatever. And it's funny, oh, he's so crazy, he's so funny, because she's flattered by it. He's trying to be me. He's trying to be something that he can never be. And it makes me feel better about myself, you see. So it goes so deep on so many different levels, but I really just wanted to speak primarily on that filtering process that we're missing amongst our males, and how sad it's become that you have all of these males who are now quote unquote family men, and they have these women that have no direction, and then you have people who may have a little bit of direction who will prey on that. You know, I had to warn a family not long ago about that. Like, listen, don't let me be the authority, the voicing authority in your house, because now your wife is mine. I can have her if I want her, and I'm entitled to her because I'm taking out of my time and energy to give her and your children guidance. That's something that you should be doing, you see. But I tell you something, and this is, like I said, this is an ugly mom. A lot of you guys who have been able to finagle your way into the hearts and wombs of these females, a lot of you deserve to have your wives taken from underneath you by alphas. You see, there was a time when we were younger where if someone tried to get at your woman, you know, you knew how to deal with them, and you knew how to deal with your woman in a way where you were able to create definition. Definition is boundaries. You were able to outline the boundaries and say, listen, no, don't do that. You can't do that. So here's the line. Don't cross it. Now that, you know, a lot of that doesn't even happen anymore. And the only reason why a lot of you are not getting knocked for your women is just because of the decency of men like me. You know, where we say, I don't want to do that to you. But the older I get, you know, you start thinking more like an old head as you become an old head. And I see why some of the old heads did what they did when I was young, and how they would try to get at our women and stuff like that. And you'd have to, you know, me, I would always approach, what are you doing, man? You know, you saw she's over here with me. What's wrong with you? You know, that was always my thing. Or I'd look at her and say, you better not dare look in this direction. If you look in this direction, just walk over there with him. Go over there. Don't even look. No, tell me what his shoes look like, but you better not tell me what color his eyes are. If you're looking at him in the eyes and all that stuff, go over there with him. Now, some, of course, may look at that and then say, oh my God, yeah. All that, oh my God, he so this, he so that, that's what's missing. And that's what's driving a lot of the alphas crazy now. Because of Revenge of the Nerds. Because the alphas they're attacked as soon as they rear their head up. No different than when you have alpha females who say, listen, I actually want a family. I actually want to have children. I don't necessarily want to be in the workspace and be some foreign disassociated entity's financial concubine. That's not what I want. I want to build a strong, powerful family. I want to give birth to royalty, and I want to have something regal. What do they get shot down? Oh, come on, man. Like, come on. This, you know, da-da-da-da-da-da. What's wrong with you? You trying to be underneath that guy? Oh, how big is his thing? Or it must be good. You acting like that. And, you know, they get shot down too. So then they start going into another space. And when an alpha male says, listen, I'm trying to take this thing over. I'm trying to have everything. You know, like when I meet individuals, they say, what do you want? I want everything. Everything. And I mean it. I want everything. You know, so we're not used to hearing things like that because that voice has become so faint and so distant in this time. That voice of the alpha has become so distant, and it's time to bring it back. So, you know, when I thought about this month's segment after I did last month, I said, you know, I would be amiss if I didn't really address the male population and address some of the things that need to happen and really make a serious decision in terms of my own actions of how we're going to move forward as a masculine collective and what Anu really represents in this. And Anu, those of you who have listened to the tenets and you're saying, I'm really appreciating this, I'm really getting a lot of this, I'm really growing, we have to bring back the alpha male. If we don't bring the alpha male back, we're not going to be able to build anything. And this is not going to work with a bunch of dominant Amazonian women who are connected and linked to a bunch of weak males. And those dominant Amazonian women, you got to understand that Amazonian nature now has built layers around you, and an alpha male is going to come with his hammer and smash them apart, and you're not going to like how it feels. It's going to hurt. And you got to be prepared for that when you say, I want a real man. You sure? Because everybody says I'm mean, but I'm not really mean. What's mean is to lie to you. That's mean. What's mean is to financially abuse you by leading you on and coaxing your ego and playing with you and playing with your mind and doing a Hannibal Lecter thing to you. That's mean. Misrepresenting myself would be mean. But making myself vulnerable, putting myself out there saying, no, listen, we gotta stand up again. We gotta be the strength of our people. We have to be the wisdom of our people. And at the same time, be the beauty of our people. That's not mean. Okay, well, you can see it's getting dark now. I started out pretty late because of things that need to happen tomorrow. So this segment I didn't necessarily do live, but I had to do a pre-record. But like I said, it's time for the alphas to come back. And a lot of times when I do the work that I do, people will be quick to align themselves with what I'm saying. Yeah, that's right, Chief. Yeah, we do need alphas. So in our next segment, I'm going to speak more about what that looks like and how that manifests itself. But I just wanted to acknowledge first that it's an issue. It's a problem, and it's one of the things that's hindering a lot of the work that we're trying to do, is the fact that there's an imbalance in the familial ecosystem. And when we speak about family and what this one does and what that one does, until we honestly and respectively identify that issue, we're not going to be able to get around it. You know, when we look at these leaders who are posturing themselves as leaders, but there's no hint of warrior energy in them, there's no hint of alpha vibration in them, they can't be the leader. They can't. They got to take a back seat. And for all of you females out there who want to be the boss, I hear that so often. You know, well, I like to be the authority. I like to this, that. You're part of the sickness. You have to stop doing that. And I know there's no one in your face telling you, well, if you don't stop that, the community's going to continue to be sick, because you're going to continue to pump out weak males who feel like they have to fold underneath your domination. And a lot of times that's a large section of the homosexual community comes from that type of paradigm. An overbearing mother, a weak father, or an absentee father. I mean, at some point we have to look at the realism of the pattern. We don't like to talk about that. We're afraid to say that. Say, no, a lot of times you have overbearing females who create homosexual children because of the sexual imbalance that exists in the home. And I'm not negating from those who have made a clear decision and said, listen, I'm a man and I like the meat. I like meat. You know, all right, if you like the meat, go get the meat. Or the females who say, hey, I like the sponge. I like spongy stuff. You like the spongy stuff? Go get the spongy stuff. But there's a large segment of that population who are beguiled into that lifestyle and even forced into that lifestyle because of a lack of domestic balance. And that's what I'm speaking about. So it's late out now, as you can see, it's dark. So we're going to close out, but I want to thank you all for listening up to this point. And I know it's been some heavy topics that we've been bringing up. And I know you're probably saying, what is he going to talk about, the Orisha and different spiritual stuff? All of this is the Orisha and spiritual stuff. When I'm telling you about male and female relationships, or if I'm saying, do you know what a woman is? What's a real woman? What's a real man? What is a man? Do you have a man? Do you have a woman? That is the spiritual sciences. So don't skip past it because you want to get back to the escapism of the metaphysics and the escapism of the mysticism and the escapism of the prayers and the crystals and the incense and the affirmations. You know, in order to address that kingdom properly, you have to address it by embracing and showing gratitude for all your endowments. Are you grateful for being a man? Are you grateful for being a woman beyond the statement? Beyond assertion, are you grateful? Are you grateful by showing it in action? Are you showing and doing man? Are you showing and doing woman? Are you being and doing man? Are you being and doing woman? Are you just asserting a hollow gratefulness or a hollow acknowledgement? That's not African. And we can't build families on top of that. That may be something else. And if you want to do something else, do that. But if you're dealing with African sciences, that's not African. You can't do it. It's got to stop, family. It's got to stop. So we have to start really looking at the alphas from the betas. And if we want to rebalance, we're going to need alphas to rebalance. We're going to need alpha men specifically. We don't need alpha women to rebalance, to be honest with you. We need alpha men, because an alpha man will plant alpha energy inside of any type of woman and will shape and contour the personality and the characteristics that are needed for liberation. And the reason why many of you don't know what to do next, common statement, I don't know where to begin, I don't know where to start, because you don't have an alpha man in your life implanting that science inside of you, implanting that knowing inside of you, implanting that course inside of you. You've been rolling around in the sack with weaklings, and now you've become weak and you've become confused. So that has to stop. All right, family. Until our next segment, please leave your comments as you've been. Definitely like, definitely subscribe, definitely share. But I want to hear your thoughts on this. I want to hear your thoughts on, and if you feel like, well, Chief, I feel like we can do it with betas. I feel like we could do it with deltas, as long as we have love. If that's your perspective, let's hear that, stupid. No, I'm playing. If that's your perspective, then let's hear it. But definitely let me get some feedback on this one. And I want to thank everyone who's been sharing their thoughts and ideas on the last segment. And please, when you do like the segments, tell me what you like about them. And the reason being is because, like for instance, last segment I held back a lot. There's a lot I didn't say, and a lot of people left comments and emails say, I really enjoyed that, thank you so much. And I'm kind of listening like, okay, well, what part did you enjoy? Because I left a lot out. Purposely, I tried to, just like this segment, I'm keeping it light. So definitely share the aspects, expound a little bit on that. All right, until next time, I'm Chief Yuya, Anu Life Global Ministries, Anu Nation, Orisha Religion, SaduluHouse.com, community radio every Tuesday and Thursdays 1 to 3. All right, Eastern. Peace.
Anu Nation is home to the Anu spiritual order founded by Chief Jegna Haru Yuya Asan Anu. Some of the components of Anu Nation are Anu Life Global Ministries, Enlightenment and Transformation, Sadulu House, and Osiris Life Spiritual Services. SaduluHouse.com is the school component of Anu Nation, where spiritual empowerment through education and training is emphasized. One way that is accomplished is through our monthly webinars. Our webinars are packed with foundational information, rituals, and live instruction to empower your spiritual work. At SaduluHouse.com, you can view our diverse list of topics for this year that range from meditation to sex magic. And you can also register for any of the webinars at your convenience, sign up for our introductory Orisha class, schedule a spiritual reading, and sign up for the Anu Spiritual Training course. Enlightenment and Transformation is the media component of Anu Nation. Here, you can view all of our archive shows from over the years to our current segments. They include Chief Speaks, Masterminds Monday, Anu Asafo, Thunderground Thursdays, and Foundational Fridays. You can also visit us on our YouTube channels. They are Enlightenment and Transformation, Orisha Yoruba, and Anu Nation. Osiris Life Spiritual Services is for those who are ready to take the necessary actions to bring your life into holistic balance. Here we offer consistent monthly one-on-one coaching, solutions that are tailored just for you, practical hands-on self-development techniques that will accompany your monthly readings, and customized practical strategies designed for you that guarantee positive results. Simply choose the package that best fits your needs. And last but not least, AlphaOmegaStore.com. The Alpha Omega Store is our online botanica where we offer divination tools, herbs and incense, DVDs, books, and other hard-to-find ritual items. You can also get our best-selling foundational book, Grasping the Root of Divine Power. Other great works from Anu Nation are Shrine and Altar, Solutions for Dysfunctional Family Relationships, and Natural Hair for Young Women. All great books to assist you on your journey. To find out more on how to get involved with Anu Nation, visit our websites and YouTube channels and be sure to sign up for our monthly newsletter.